Something about the quietness of that announcement felt heavier than the words themselves. No dramatic statement. No long explanation. Just a simple confirmation that after 14 years of marriage, and nearly 3 decades together, Eamonn Holmes and Ruth Langsford's partnership had come to an end. For so many people who had grown used to seeing them side by side on daytime television, the news landed like a sudden change in the weather. One moment the familiar warmth of their on-screen presence still lingered in the memory. The next, it was gone. They had been the kind of presenting pair that made living rooms feel less empty. On this morning they bantered, teased, finished each other's thoughts, and somehow made the ordinary rhythms of a weekday morning feel companionable. Viewers didn't just watch them. They felt they knew them. The easy chemistry, the shared glances, the way Ruth's dry humor would cut through Eamonn's more expansive storytelling. It created the illusion of a private conversation the rest of us were allowed to overhear. When that sense of continuity ends, something in the audience feels it too. Many people watching over the years had built a quiet affection for them as a unit. Not because every moment was perfect, but because the imperfections felt recognizable. The gentle disagreements, the affectionate eye rolls, the way they still managed to laugh together even when the conversation turned serious. In an industry that thrives on polished surfaces, their particular brand of familiarity stood out. So when the news of the split arrived, the reaction wasn't simply curiosity. For some it was a kind of personal disappointment, as if a long-running story they had been following had closed its final chapter without warning. There were, of course, the usual questions. What had shifted? How does a relationship that looked so steady from the outside reach a point of no return? Career paths had already begun to diverge after they left this morning. Eamonn moved to GB News while Ruth remained a familiar presence on Loose Women and other ITV programs. Different studios, different schedules, different daily pressures. Some observers wondered whether those separate professional worlds slowly pulled them in opposite directions. Others noted the long shadow of Eamonn's ongoing health struggles, the chronic pain and mobility challenges that had become part of their public narrative. Caring for someone you love while also navigating the demands of television can place a quiet, constant strain on even the strongest foundations. Yet nothing has ever been officially confirmed as the single cause. And perhaps that is the most human part of the story. Marriages rarely end because of one dramatic moment that can be neatly explained. They fray through smaller shifts, accumulated distances, and private reckonings that the public never sees. Ruth has since spoken of feeling blindsided, of mornings that began with tears, of the deep sense of loss that comes when a future you had imagined simply disappears. Eamonn, for his part, has reflected on the difficulty of balancing a demanding career with a private life. Those quiet admissions carry more weight than any speculation ever could. What stayed with many viewers was not the rumor or the headline. It was the realization that the couple they had watched for so long were, in the end, two people trying to navigate the same complicated terrain as everyone else. The cameras had captured the laughter and the chemistry. They had not captured the private cost of living so much of a life in public. Daytime television asks its presenters to be both professionals and companions. When that companionship ends off-screen, the audience is left holding the memory of something that once felt reliable. Perhaps that is why the story continues to resonate. It is not only about two well-known faces. It is about the quiet shock of watching a familiar partnership dissolve, and the way it reminds us that even the most public relationships remain, at their core, private. The studio lights go down. The microphones are switched off. And what remains is two people deciding, for reasons only they fully understand, that the chapter has closed. Maybe what lingers longest is not the announcement itself, but the space it left behind. The absence of that familiar rhythm on screen. The knowledge that something once shared with millions of viewers had always belonged, first and last, to the two people living it. And perhaps that is why so many still find themselves thinking about it long after the news cycle moved on. Not out of gossip, but out of a quieter recognition that even the relationships that feel most constant can change, and that the ending of one story can leave an unexpected silence in rooms that once felt full of conversation.